Hello, friends, and welcome into NFL Daily. I am your host, Tom Downey. The 2021 NFL Draft, it is done, it is over, it is in the books, but there are still quite a few notable NFL free agents left unsigned. So on today's video, we're running you through a whole bunch of them and maybe discuss where they could end up signing. Sheldon Richardson kicks things off here, as I'm sure everybody here knows because you're all subscribed and we discussed him previously. He was cut by the Browns after they signed Jadeveon Clowney, and he is still a starting quality defensive tackle. Now, at least publicly, the Browns have been open to bringing back Richardson. After the draft, we'll see if that's really the path that they end up going, but I don't think you can totally rule it out. But if you're in the market for a good defensive lineman who maybe isn't the same guy he was at his very, very best, but can for dang sure help you, Richardson makes a lot of sense. All right, KJ Wright, who I think there is a very real chance ends up back with the Seattle Seahawks after their draft. He's coming off a strong year for Seattle, and I think there's a lot of disappointment in Wright's camp about the level of interest shown in him. The Cowboys were linked, however, briefly, and that's been about it. And the NFL in general, as you'll see as a common theme on this list, well, they're ageist. They don't like old guys because they worry about them declining. But Wright was great last year. 86 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 10 pass breakups. Yeah, he got picked on a lot in coverage, but he kind of held up pretty darn well from that perspective. So maybe it's back with Seattle, but whoever ends up signing Wright, I think, is getting a starting linebacker for this upcoming season. One of the biggest names out there is Richard Sherman. His market was, and is, I should say, rather slow to develop. Now, he said he was going to wait until after the draft to pick his destination. He also mentioned during the NFL draft, so maybe you missed it, he's talked with several teams. He mentioned 5, including the possibility of going back and re-signing with the San Francisco 49ers. Las Vegas Raiders, New York Jets, New Orleans Saints, and yes, the Seattle Seahawks, 4 of the other 5 teams. He has had talks about a potential reunion there. I still think the Jets make sense. That was my initial prediction, although I thought it was going to happen during or before the NFL draft, not potentially afterwards on that front. So we will see where Sherman ends up signing. He is coming off an injury-plagued year. I don't know how much gas he really has left in the tank, but I do think Sherman offers you maybe not legit number 1 cornerback ability anymore, but at least, number 2 good veteran presence cornerback as well for a young team like the Jets or a team with a lot of young and unproven corners like the Raiders, and I think you can still include the Seahawks from that perspective. Sherman would be a good fit. So make your predictions for me. Who do you think will end up signing Richard Sherman? Is it one of those 5 teams? An unknown 6th contender coming out of the blue? Get your predictions in for me in the comment section right now. Let's talk Casey Hayward here. Remember, released by the Chargers back in March. As a released player, he could have signed whenever and not impacted the comp pick formula. We're now beyond that point for all free agents anyway. The problem with Hayward, even though he has inside-outside cornerback versatility, and I still think he's a decent player, 2020 campaign was not his best. And especially early on in the year, he did not look great. When you see a lot of these older players last as an unsigned option, you start to wonder just how much the NFL thinks they have left in their tank, and I do believe that Hayward fits that category. All right, this question is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get that ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down, get your votes in, and let me know who you think the best NFL free agent left unsigned is. Get your votes in right now in the comment section. Melvin Ingram next up here. Only played in 6 games due to injury, but I think there's still a market for a pass rusher of his caliber. Now, coming off a 0-sack season is a bit of a red flag, and that's worrisome, especially given his age, but somebody should gamble on him and find an option here in terms of an edge rusher for a veteran presence. Justin Houston, who we mentioned previously on this show, because he had a pre-draft visit with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, he's with the Colts last year. I think that one's about done after they drafted 2 defensive ends with their first 2 picks there. He is aging, but again, if you want a veteran backup pass rusher, Houston fits that mold. Ryan Kerrigan also fits that veteran pass rusher option. Maybe not a number 1 or number 2 anymore, but as a number 3 guy, I think that could absolutely work in the NFL. Now, his production over his NFL career legitimately has been some of the best and the most underrated. He was putting up double-digit sacks for almost his entire career. The last 2 years, however, that production has declined. Now, part of that is due to the fact that Kerrigan, didn't play as much, especially in 2020. Washington had these guys named Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Maybe you've heard of them. They're really good football players and played over Ryan Kerrigan as a result. But if you want a veteran option, Kerrigan is actually the best of the previous couple names we just discussed. Folks, Chat Sports is now available on the Newsbreak app. Go download it today using our link to help support the show. chatsports.com/Newsbreak. Now, of course, not just Chat Sports videos on that app. It's also local news. And if you guys are like me, you don't get the paper delivered to you. You kind of built yourself a nice little sports bubble, and that's cool, but you also have no idea what's going on in your community. Well, thanks to the Newsbreak app, I've been able to burst that bubble and be more aware with what's going on around me. So you should download it too, and of course, also help support the show while you're doing it. It's chatsports.com/Cowboys News, or chatsports.com/Newsbreak, excuse me. That link will be in both the comment section and in the description to make your life easier. All you have to do is click it and then go download it there. chatsports.com/Newsbreak. Support the show and be more aware with what's going on in your local community. Truly one of the most recent free agents here, Charles Leno, was just released by the Bears earlier on Monday. Veteran left tackle. I don't know how long he's going to remain unsigned. I think he can still be a low-end starter in the NFL. And having looked around the NFL and then the offensive line options out there, Leno's not that bad, especially if you're a team like maybe the Colts, the Steelers, just a couple teams out there. To Eric Fisher now, who, if he were healthy, might not have even been cut by Kansas City, but also wouldn't still be unsigned. Unfortunately for Fisher, he missed the Super Bowl with a torn Achilles, and I don't know if he's going to be ready to start the 2021 season. Now, Mitchell Schwartz was the right tackle for KC, but he also missed most of 2020 with some problematic, I think, concerning back issues as well. He said more this past week he is open to returning to Kansas City, but any interest in him is going to be tied directly to the medicals, so we'll have to wait and see on Schwartz. Russell Okung is still out there as one of the top unsigned, not just offensive tackles, but I would argue free agents. Now, at this stage in his career, he turns 33 later on this season. That's concerning. Old guys missing 7 games due to injury. Once you reach a certain age, especially for a bully position like the offensive line, I worry you don't ever get fully healthy. But if you want a stopgap, Russell can do that quite well. And there's Alejandro Villanueva, who played left tackle this past year for the Steelers, has always graded out pretty well by Pro Football Focus. But I think Steelers fans would agree with me here. The decline had kind of begun to set in. He hasn't missed a game in 6 years. Durability matters, but I don't think he's quite prime Villanueva anymore. Todd Gurley, one of the very few good, potentially good, maybe I should clarify there, skill players left there on the open market. We did not include Lev Bell because I think he's pretty much washed at this point. Gurley's play, however, is concerning. He struggled bad down the stretch, and he is not the same guy that fantasy owners everywhere loved with the LA Rams. The past 2 years, 3.7 yards per carry. That is just the guy production. That is bad pretty clearly. Now, this is your chance to be a hater after I kind of threw some shade at Todd Gurley. If you're watching, Todd, go prove me wrong. Who is the most overrated NFL free agent out there? Get your votes in for me right now in the comments section. One of the top safeties left on the open market, Malik Hooker. The talent has always been there. I loved him coming out of Ohio State. The problem is he's always been hurt. Has missed 26 games the past 4 seasons, and that's almost half of them. He's only played 28 games past 4 seasons, has played in 36 of them. Torn Achilles this past year. It's very clear medicals are a major issue for him when he's been out there on the field and healthy, because he's trying to play through some stuff too, and I think some of that athletic ability has been lost at least a little bit due to all of those injuries. 7 interceptions, 11 pass breakups. You don't often find playmakers at that level still out there on the open market. For Malik Hooker, we'll have to see what happens there. All right, more secondary guys. Brian Poole, who I think is maybe the best slot corner on the market right now. Now, he missed the rest of 2020, ended the year on IR due to a shoulder injury there. I start to think that Brian Poole is kind of in the Desmond King category of players I really like. I know a lot of you guys in the comment section like as well, but the NFL doesn't have the same caliber of interest. So we will see what it looks like there for Brian Poole if he ends up getting signed in the near future. As news happens, we will break it down for you guys here at Chat Sports. So if you haven't already, hit that big red button and subscribe today. YouTube.com/ChatSportsTV. Link right there, bottom of your screen if you need it. But if you're watching on YouTube, just hit the button. That way you don't miss out on any of the videos we do for you guys here multiple times a day at Chat Sports. Steven Nelson, who the Steelers tried to trade, but I don't think there was really much interest in. He is still a free agent, cut earlier in the offseason. Haven't heard a ton of buzz around him, but like a lot of these guys, I think that will begin to change as teams look for veterans to help fill the needs they were unable to fill in the NFL draft. I've seen many questions about Kwon Alexander on our various shows here at Chat Sports, so I put him on this list. I'm not going to get too excited about him signing in the near future. Tore his Achilles back in December. There's been a litany of injuries for the very talented linebacker. If he does sign this year, which, again, I think will probably happen, I don't think it's soon, though. I think Alexander will have to wait and see what happens in terms of the medical side as he gets healthier and healthier after dealing with so many injuries over the years. A bigger name, how about Golden Tate? Cut by the Giants this offseason. Now, Tate was 4th on New York in receiving yards last year, and he's not the guy he was at his very, very best in Seattle. I still think, however, he could start in the slot on the right team. Seattle's no longer in the cards if they drafted Dwayne Eskridge. But if you want a decent number 3, as long as Tate's not going to be a complainer, I think there's room for him on an NFL roster. All right, so earlier we asked you most overrated NFL free agent. Now it's your turn to be nice in the comments section. Who is the most underrated NFL free agent available right now on the open market? Maybe it's somebody not even on this list. Get your votes in right now. Let's go to Geno Atkins, another household name here. I don't think he's not going to get much of a contract. Like cost-wise, he's going to be cheap. I know there are a lot of questions about, well, could the Bengals trade him? Nobody was picking him up at his contract. He's going to have to take a cheap prove-it deal, having not been remotely impactful this past year. Just a couple of games and 1 tackle. That's not good enough. But as a buy low option, I like Atkins for a team out there. Trai Turner has gone from a, wow, can't believe the Chargers got him in a trade, to, wow, he was horrible this past year. Now, he battled through a groin injury, but the Trai Turner we saw in LA this year truly was just an absolute disaster in the end. Now, he was a Pro Bowler from for the Panthers from 2015 through 2019. But beyond that, this past year, he was really bad. So we will see if and when Turner gets a shot with a new NFL team.